Hello, guys. Tonight we're going to step back in time, not into a grand palace or a bustling European city, but into the quiet, often stiflingly hot world of a sepoy, an Indian soldier serving in the British East India Company's army in the mid-19th century. We're going to explore the mundane, the routine, the small discomforts, and the curious blend of cultures that made up your daily existence, hopefully lulling you into a state of quiet contemplation, or perhaps a very sound sleep. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. No pressure, and do let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight and what time it is for you. It's always interesting to see just how far this particular brand of historical meandering travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up, not to the gentle chirping of birds or the soft glow of a sunrise filtering through a window, but to the sharp, insistent call of a bugle cutting through the pre-dawn stillness. It's still dark, a deep, humid darkness that clings to everything, suggesting the oppressive heat that will inevitably arrive with the sun. The sound, a familiar reveille, is less a gentle summons and more an unceremonious yank from the depths of sleep, demanding immediate attention. You are not alone in this abrupt awakening. The collective groans and rustles of dozens of men around you confirm that the day has, once again, begun. Your bed is a charpoy, a simple wooden frame strung with ropes or woven tape, offering a firm, if not entirely comfortable, surface. It's better than the bare earth, but not by much, and your body, accustomed to its unyielding nature, still carries the subtle aches of a night spent on something designed more for utility than luxurious slumber. The air around you is thick, already heavy with the impending heat, carrying the distinct smells of the cantonment, a faint aroma of wood smoke from distant cooking fires, the dusty scent of the earth, and the undeniable, pervasive smell of unwashed humanity, a blend of sweat, old cloth, and the subtle, metallic tang of bodies packed together in close proximity. You push yourself up, your muscles protesting softly. The first task, before even the thought of proper ablutions, is simply to reorient yourself, to gather the fragmented pieces of your consciousness from the dream-laden depths. The barrack room is a vast, open space, often little more than a long, rectangular shed with mud walls and a thatched roof, designed for practicality rather than comfort. Rows upon rows of charpoys stretch out around you, each occupied by a fellow sepoy, a sea of sleeping or stirring figures, their outlines indistinct in the dim light. There is no privacy here, only a collective existence, a constant awareness of others, their breathing, their movements, their shared discomforts. As you swing your legs over the side of your charpoy, your bare feet meet the cool, packed earth floor. It's a momentary relief, a small, fleeting comfort before the heat of the day truly sets in. You reach for your dhoti or loincloth, the simplest garment, easy to don in the dark. The formal uniform, starched and stiff, will come later, after the morning rituals. For now, it's about speed and efficiency, about blending into the silent preparations of the men around you. The sound of coughs, quiet conversations, the clinking of metal against metal as someone prepares their equipment, all weave into the low hum of the barrack coming to life. Water is a precious commodity, especially here. A small brass lota, a traditional Indian pot, is your personal vessel. You make your way to the communal pump or well, joining a silent queue of men, their faces still etched with sleep. The water drawn from the well is surprisingly cool, a shock against your skin as you splash it on your face and hands. It's a rudimentary wash, designed to simply remove the thickest layers of sleep and grime, not to provide true cleanliness. A small, rough piece of cloth serves as your towel, absorbing little and spreading much. The concept of daily bathing, so ingrained in your traditional life, is often a luxury here, constrained by resources and the relentless demands of military routine. Back in the barrack, The light from the outside is gradually strengthening, painting the rough walls with a pale, dusty gray. You begin the meticulous process of donning your uniform. It's a familiar ritual, performed thousands of times. First, the crisp, white cotton shirt, often starched so stiffly it feels like cardboard against your skin. Then the trousers, sometimes a simple pajama style, sometimes a tighter, more formal cut. And finally, the iconic red coat, the angarka, with its brass buttons gleaming, its high collar rubbing against your neck. It's a heavy garment, designed for European climates and European sensibilities of military presentation, rather than the relentless heat of the Indian plains. You often wonder, with a wry, internal chuckle, if the English officers ever truly understood the exquisite torture of wearing so much thick wool and heavy cloth under a blazing Indian sun. Your cross belts, made of stiff leather, crisscross your chest, holding your cartridge box and bayonet sheath. The leather is often chafing, especially as the day wears on and sweat begins to accumulate beneath it. Then comes the shako, the tall, cylindrical cap, often adorned with a brass plate and a plume. It's an impressive piece of headwear, certainly designed for show, but it offers little in the way of practical sun protection and feels like a small oven perched atop your head. You adjust it carefully, ensuring it sits just right, a symbol of your identity as a company soldier, even if it feels rather unwieldy. The smell of polished leather and gun oil now mingles with the other scents of the barrack. You inspect your musket, your brown bess, a sturdy, reliable, if somewhat ancient, weapon. You run your hand along the smooth, oiled stock, check the flint, ensure the barrel is clean. This weapon is your livelihood, your companion, your protector, and, perhaps, in some distant, unarticulated corner of your mind, a potential tool of rebellion. It is British-made, a symbol of their power, but it is wielded by your hands, your countrymen's hands. This duality is a constant, subtle undercurrent in your life here. The final touches involve your personal kit, your mess tin, your spoon, your water bottle. Everything has its designated place, a precise order enforced by the inspecting British sergeants and officers. You learn quickly that deviation from this order results in a stern rebuke, extra duties, or worse. Discipline is paramount, the bedrock of this foreign military system. It is a discipline that feels alien at first, a rigid structure imposed upon a life that traditionally flowed with the rhythms of family, village, and season. But you adapt, you learn to conform, for survival and for the meager pay that supports your family back home. The sounds outside the barrack are now growing louder. The distant bugle calls are joined by the rhythmic thud of marching feet, the sharp commands of British sergeants, their voices carrying a distinct cadence, often strained with the effort of communication in a language you only partially grasp. You understand the commands for drill, the shouted instructions for formations, but the nuances of their daily conversations, their jokes, their cultural references, remain largely a mystery, a barrier that subtly reinforces the divide between you and them. You join the stream of men filing out of the barrack, merging into the collective flow of your company. The air outside is still relatively cool, a brief respite before the sun truly asserts its dominion. The ground is hard, dusty earth, often uneven, and your bare feet or simple sandals feel every pebble. As you walk towards the parade ground, the sheer scale of the cantonment begins to reveal itself. Rows of similar barracks stretch into the distance, interspersed with the grander, more solid structures of the officers' bungalows, their gardens a splash of green against the dusty landscape, a stark contrast to the utilitarian simplicity of your own quarters. The parade ground is already a hive of activity. Companies are forming up, lines of red-coated figures, their movements precise, synchronized. The air is filled with the murmur of voices, the clink of equipment, and the rhythmic beat of a distant drum. You take your place in the ranks, standing at attention, your shoulders back, your chest out, your gaze fixed straight ahead. This is where you spend a significant portion of your day, learning the drills, perfecting the movements, becoming a cog in the vast, well-oiled machine of the British East India Company's army. The sun begins its slow, relentless ascent, its rays already feeling surprisingly strong on your skin, even in these early hours. You can feel the first beads of sweat forming on your brow, trickling down your temples. The red coat, initially a symbol of pride, now feels like a warm embrace, preparing you for the inevitable discomfort of the day. The dust, stirred up by hundreds of marching feet, begins to rise, coating everything in a fine, pervasive layer, settling on your uniform, on your skin, even in your mouth. You taste it, a dry, earthy flavor that will linger throughout the day. The morning drill is a repetitive, almost meditative sequence of movements. Present arms, slope arms, load and fire. Each action is broken down, practiced endlessly until it becomes second nature, an instinctive response. The musket, heavy and unwieldy, feels like an extension of your arm. The physical exertion is considerable, especially under the rising sun, but you learn to conserve your energy, to make each movement efficient, to breathe deeply and evenly. Your mind often wanders during these drills, drifting to thoughts of your family, your village, the fields you once tilled, the simple life you left behind. The commands come in English, sharp and precise. Shoulder arms, fix bayonets. You respond with a practiced uniformity, your body moving without conscious thought. Your British officers, their faces often red and perspiring under their pith helmets, stride up and down the lines, their voices barking instructions, correcting flaws. They are a different breed, these sahibs. Their skin is pale, their language guttural, their customs bewildering. They live in grand houses, eat strange foods, and seem to possess an endless supply of confidence, even arrogance. Yet, they are your commanders, the source of your pay, the arbiters of your fate. You observe them, silently, trying to discern their moods, their expectations, their unpredictable whims. Sometimes, during these drills, you catch the eye of a fellow sepoy, a fleeting glance of shared understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the absurdity, the tedium, and the underlying necessity of it all. You are from different regions, perhaps even different castes or religions, but here, in the ranks, under the red coat, you are united by a common purpose, a shared experience. This camaraderie, unspoken and often subtle, is a vital thread that binds you to this new, artificial family. You learn to rely on each other, to anticipate each other's movements, to share the burdens and the occasional small joys. The sun continues its ascent, a relentless, burning orb in the vast, pale sky. The dust on the parade ground now shimmers in the heat, creating a hazy, almost dreamlike quality to the air. You can feel the sweat trickling down your back, forming damp patches on your uniform. The heavy wool of the red coat, designed for a colder climate, feels increasingly oppressive. You long for the shade, for a moment of stillness, for a sip of cool water, but the drill continues, hour after monotonous hour. You are drilled in skirmishing, in forming squares against cavalry charges, in firing volleys. The air fills with the acrid smell of gunpowder, a sharp, metallic scent that stings your nostrils. The roar of the muskets, even with blank charges, is deafening, momentarily blurring your vision and vibrating through your bones. You learn to load and fire with remarkable speed, a complex sequence of movements. Tear the cartridge, pour powder down the barrel, ram the ball and wadding, prime the pan, aim, and fire. It's a dance of practiced efficiency, designed to unleash a lethal hail of lead upon an enemy. The British officers emphasize precision, uniformity, and unquestioning obedience. They speak of honor, of duty, of the company's glory, concepts that often feel abstract and distant compared to the immediate realities of hunger, heat, and the aching need for rest. You perform your duties, you obey the commands, but your motivations are often simpler, more grounded. You are here for your family, for the steady pay that keeps them from destitution, for the prestige that comes with military service, however alien this service may be. The parade ground stretches out endlessly, a flat expanse of sun-baked earth. Distant trees offer no relief, their leaves wilting under the sun's glare. The only sounds are the rhythmic thud of marching feet, the sharp bark of commands, and the occasional clang of equipment. Your mind, as it often does during these long hours of repetitive physical exertion, begins to drift, to conjure images of home, of the cool shade of a banyan tree, the laughter of children, the familiar rhythms of village life. These memories are a comfort, a quiet rebellion against the relentless discipline and the foreign environment that surrounds you. Sometimes, you might catch a glimpse of the officers' wives, riding past in palanquins or phaetons, their faces pale beneath their parasols, their fine European dresses a splash of incongruous color against the dusty backdrop. They seem like creatures from another world, delicate and distant, utterly removed from the harsh realities of your daily life. Their presence is a constant, subtle reminder of the vast chasm between your world and theirs, a chasm of language, culture, and power. They are the symbols of the company's dominion, of the foreign presence that has so profoundly reshaped your land and your life. The heat becomes more intense as the morning progresses, a suffocating blanket that presses down on you. Your uniform is now thoroughly damp with sweat, clinging to your skin, making every movement a minor effort. You learn to breathe shallowly, to conserve your energy, to find tiny moments of mental escape. The sun glares down, a relentless, unblinking eye, drying out your throat, making your eyes stink. The dust seems to stick to your skin, mixing with the sweat to form a grimy film. You long for the midday break, for the brief respite that promises a few hours of shade and relative quiet. Finally, a bugle call signals the end of the morning drill. It's a sound of liberation, a small wave of relief washing over the ranks. The tension that has held your body rigid for hours begins to dissipate, leaving behind a profound weariness. You march back to the barrack, your steps less precise now, your shoulders slumped, your gaze fixed on the ground. The collective silence of the men, broken only by the shuffle of feet and the occasional sigh, speaks volumes about the exhaustion that has settled upon you all. Back in the barrack, the first thing you do is shed the oppressive red coat, letting it fall onto your charpoy with a sigh of relief. The cooler cotton shirt beneath feels like a blessing. You reach for your water bottle, the water inside tepid but still welcome, and drink deeply, trying to quench the pervasive thirst that seems to have taken root deep within your throat. The silence here is different from the silent discipline of the parade ground. It's a silence of exhaustion, of men conserving their energy, seeking refuge from the relentless sun. Midday meal is another simple affair, often dal, a lentil stew, served with chapatis or rice. The food is nutritious enough, designed to provide the energy needed for the arduous military life, but it lacks variety and often flavor. You eat quickly, mindlessly, your body craving sustenance rather than enjoyment. The communal eating is a familiar comfort, a small echo of the shared meals of your village life, even if the conversations around you are different, dominated by talk of drill, officers, and the latest rumors from the lines. After the meal, there is a short period of rest, a precious few hours before the afternoon duties begin. Some men sleep, collapsing onto their charpoys, their bodies finding immediate repose. Others gamble with small, worn dice, their voices low and murmuring. Some mend their uniforms or clean their equipment, preparing for the next round of inspections. You might find a quiet corner, away from the immediate bustle, and try to find a moment of stillness, perhaps to write a letter home, dictated to a literate comrade, or simply to gaze out into the shimmering heat, your mind drifting. The heat of the afternoon is a suffocating embrace. The air in the barrack becomes thick and still, the light outside a blinding glare. You try to find the coolest spot, often near a doorway or a small, high window, where a faint, fleeting breath of air might stir. The silence is broken only by the buzz of flies, the distant shouts of officers, and the occasional whirring of a punkah, a large fan pulled by a punkah wallah for the comfort of the British officers in their bungalows, a stark reminder of the privileges you do not possess. Your afternoon duties might involve guard duty, standing watch at a gate, a post, or within the cantonment itself. This is often a solitary, monotonous task, standing perfectly still under the blazing sun, your musket at the ready, your eyes scanning the horizon. The heat makes concentration difficult, your mind prone to wandering, to replaying old memories, to imagining distant lands and forgotten faces. The red coat, by now, feels like a second skin of pure misery, trapping the heat in the sweat. The bayonet, fixed to your musket, gleams menacingly, a constant reminder of your purpose. Sometimes, a British officer might pass by, offering a curt nod, or perhaps a sharp question if he perceives any lapse in your bearing. You stand straighter, your gaze fixed, offering the required salute. The interaction is brief, formal, a fleeting moment of contact across the cultural divide. You wonder what they think of you, these brown-skinned men in their red coats, serving an empire that stretches halfway across the globe. Do they see you as loyal soldiers, as expendable assets, as mere instruments of their power? The answers remain elusive, hidden behind their inscrutable faces and their clipped, foreign accents. Other afternoon tasks might include fatigue duty, manual labor for the benefit of the cantonment, digging ditches, repairing roads, carrying supplies. These are often the least glamorous, most physically demanding duties, performed under the relentless sun, your uniform quickly becoming grimy and sweat-soaked. The camaraderie among the sepoys is often strongest during these times, a shared burden, a collective sigh of quiet complaint. You work steadily, methodically, knowing that the task will eventually end, and with it, the intense physical exertion. The sun begins its slow descent in the late afternoon, casting long, distorted shadows across the parade ground. The air, though still warm, begins to lose some of its suffocating intensity. This is often the time for another round of drill, or perhaps target practice on the firing range. The crack of muskets echoes across the dusty plains, the smell of gunpowder once again thick in the air. The aim is to hit the target, a simple wooden silhouette, but the precision required is immense, especially after a long day of heat and exertion. You squint down the barrel, align the sights, squeeze the trigger, and feel the familiar kick of the musket against your shoulder. As evening approaches, the air takes on a softer quality, the light turning golden, then deepening to a rich orange and purple as the sun dips below the horizon. The bugle calls sound retreat, a welcome signal marking the end of the day's formal duties. You march back to the barrack, your body weary, your mind quiet. The sounds of the cantonment begin to shift, the daytime bustle replaced by the more relaxed hum of evening life. The smell of cooking fires is more prominent now, a comforting aroma promising the evening meal. The evening meal is much like the morning or midday, simple and functional. But there is a different atmosphere now. The day's rigid discipline has eased, replaced by a more relaxed camaraderie. Men sit together on their charpoys or on the floor, sharing stories, exchanging news, playing cards. The conversations are in your own language, filled with the familiar cadences and humor of your own people. You might talk about home, about the latest letter from your family, about the eccentricities of the British officers, or about the simple events of the day. This is your time, a small slice of freedom and familiarity before the day truly ends. You might spend it cleaning your uniform, scrubbing the dust and sweat from the red coat, preparing it for the next day's inspection. or you might polish your brass buttons, making them gleam under the dim light of the barrack lantern. There is a quiet satisfaction in these mundane tasks, a sense of order and personal responsibility amidst the larger, impersonal machinery of the army. As the night deepens, the sounds of the cantonment gradually subside. The distant barking of dogs, the occasional mournful cry of a jackal, the soft strumming of a stringed instrument from a nearby barrack, all weave into a tapestry of evening sounds. The air becomes cooler, a blessed relief after the relentless heat of the day. You prepare your charpoy, pulling your thin blanket over you, arranging your meager belongings. You lie down, your body heavy with fatigue, but your mind still quietly active. You think about tomorrow, about the endless cycle of drill, duty, and heat. You think about your family, praying for their well-being, wondering when you will next see them. You think about the company, this strange, powerful entity that commands your life, that dresses you in red, that trains you to fight wars that are not entirely your own. The stars begin to emerge, tiny pinpricks of light in the vast, inky blackness, indifferent to your small existence. The subtle hum of the barrack, the soft breathing of the men around you, becomes the lullaby that guides you towards sleep. Yet, even in the quiet dark, the ship of your being continues to sway, not with the roll of the ocean, but with the persistent, internal rhythm of the day's heat and exertion. Your body retains the ghost of the musket's weight, the ghost of the constant standing, the ghost of the dust that settled into every pore. Sleep, when it comes, is often shallow, punctuated by the shifting of other bodies, the occasional cough, or the distant call of a sentry. You are never truly alone, never truly in a bubble of undisturbed repose. The company of your fellow sepoys is a complex tapestry. You are all from different villages, different regions, speaking different dialects, observing different customs. Yet, you share this life, this peculiar existence under the British flag. There's the grizzled veteran, his face a roadmap of countless campaigns, his eyes holding a weary wisdom. He's seen it all, from skirmishes in the Punjab to sieges in Burma, and he occasionally shares a quiet anecdote, a dry observation that cuts through the official rhetoric. You listen to him, absorbing his experience, for it is often the only true education you receive beyond the drill square. Then there are the younger recruits, their faces still fresh, their enthusiasm sometimes bordering on naivety. They still possess a flicker of that youthful idealism, that belief in the glory of military service, before the drudgery and the subtle injustices wear it down. You remember being like them, eager, perhaps a little intimidated, but ready to prove your worth. You try to offer them quiet advice, a subtle warning here, a word of encouragement there, knowing that this life will quickly strip away any illusions. The hierarchy within your company is also a constant, subtle force. There are your native officers, the subadars and jemaddars, men who have risen through the ranks, often after decades of loyal service. They are Indian like you, speaking your language, understanding your cultural nuances. Yet they are also representatives of the British authority, bridges between two worlds. They carry themselves with a certain dignity, a quiet authority. They are the ones who translate the commands, who mediate disputes, who often bear the brunt of both British demands and sepoy grievances. You respect them, often, but you also understand their difficult position, caught between two masters. Their lives are often slightly more comfortable than yours. A slightly larger tent on campaign, perhaps a small, private room in the barrack, and certainly more authority. But they too are limited, their rank capped, their true power constrained by the ever-present British officers who ultimately hold the reins. You observe their subtle interactions with the sahibs, the polite deference, the carefully chosen words, the unspoken negotiations. It is a masterclass in navigating a complex power dynamic, a skill you try to quietly emulate. The British officers are, in many ways, an enigma. They are young, many of them, fresh from England, sent out to govern and command an empire they barely understand. Their understanding of your culture is often superficial, gleaned from dusty textbooks and the advice of older, often biased, officers. They speak in clipped tones, sometimes attempting a smattering of Hindustani, often mangling it in ways that elicit quiet, internal amusement among the sepoys. They are brave, often leading from the front in battle, but they can also be arrogant, dismissive, and utterly oblivious to the subtle indignities they inflict. You observe their peculiar habits, their endless consumption of tea, their insistence on dressing formally even in the most unbearable heat, their strange games and pastimes. They seem to carry their entire world with them, an unbreakable bubble of Englishness that resists the influence of the land they occupy. You learn to predict their moods, to interpret their gestures, to understand the subtle signals of their displeasure or their rare moments of approval. Your very survival, in many ways, depends on this quiet understanding of their unpredictable nature. The food, as mentioned, is a monotonous but vital part of your existence. Dal and chapati, or rice, form the backbone of almost every meal. Sometimes, if supplies are good, there might be a small portion of vegetable or even a tough piece of goat meat. But the consistency is what truly defines it. Consistency in its plainness, its lack of variety, its single-minded focus on basic sustenance. You miss the flavors of home, the spices, the fresh produce, the varied preparations of your mother's kitchen. This food is fuel, nothing more, designed to keep a body functioning, not to bring joy. Water, as you quickly learn, is not just precious but potentially perilous. You learn to rely on the ship's communal water sources, or, when on campaign, the wells designated by the company. But even then, there is a constant, subtle anxiety about contamination, about the unseen dangers that lurk in stagnant water. The British officers, with their superior knowledge, often have their water boiled, a luxury you rarely enjoy. You simply drink what is available, trusting to fate, or perhaps to a higher power, that it will not bring sickness. And sickness, as you know, is a constant, silent threat. Malaria, cholera, dysentery, fevers of unknown origin, these are the true enemies, more insidious and often more deadly than any opposing army. A bout of fever can quickly drain your strength, leaving you weak and vulnerable. The company's medical facilities are rudimentary at best, a single surgeon for hundreds, sometimes thousands, of men. Treatments are often harsh, ineffective, or simply unavailable. You learn to rely on traditional remedies, on the quiet wisdom of your elders, on the resilience of your own body. You've seen men waste away, their bodies consumed by disease, their faces turning gaunt and their eyes losing their spark. The barracks sometimes becomes a temporary infirmary, filled with the groans and labored breathing of the sick. There is a quiet stoicism among the men in the face of illness, a shared understanding that this is simply part of the life you have chosen, a risk you accept. You offer small comforts to your ailing comrades, a sip of water, a cool cloth on a fevered brow, knowing that one day you might be the one lying on the charpoy, dependent on their kindness. Letters from home are rare and precious, delivered irregularly by company runners or sympathetic villagers. They are often dictated, for literacy is not widespread, and the words are simple, telling of family health, of harvests, of the never-ending cycle of life in your village. You cherish these scraps of paper, reading them over and over, trying to conjure the faces, the voices, the smells of the place you left behind. You dictate your own replies, attempting to convey the endless sameness of your military life, the constant heat, the rigorous drills, the longing for home, all while trying to reassure them that you are well, that the pay continues to arrive. The pay itself is a fundamental reason you are here. It is not princely, but it is steady, reliable, a stark contrast to the unpredictable fortunes of agricultural life. A portion of it is often sent directly to your family, a lifeline that keeps them fed, clothed, and housed. The rest is for your meager personal needs, for tobacco, for an occasional sweet treat from a local vendor, for the small necessities that make this existence tolerable. You learn the value of every single anna, every rupee, hoarding it, making it stretch as far as it can go. Your social life, such as it is, revolves around the barrack and the company. There are no grand entertainments, no vibrant festivals like those you knew back home. The celebrations, when they occur, are usually British-style, formalized parades, the King's birthday, or the company's victories. You participate, of course, marching in formation, saluting the flag, but the joy feels manufactured, the enthusiasm forced. True moments of levity are found in the quiet conversations, the shared jokes, the occasional storytelling sessions in the barrack at night, when the heat has subsided and the stars begin to gleam like scattered diamonds in the velvet sky. Gambling is a common pastime. Small stakes, often just a few annas, but enough to offer a momentary distraction from the monotony. Card games, dice games, played in the dim light of a lantern, the faces of the men intent, their voices low and hushed. It's a way to pass the endless hours, to create a small thrill, a brief escape from the predictable rhythm of military life. You might win a few coins, enough for a treat, or lose a few, a minor disappointment that quickly fades into the larger backdrop of your existence. The cantonment itself is a strange, self-contained world, a British island in the vast Indian Ocean. It has its own rules, its own rhythms, its own peculiar architecture. The wide, dusty roads, the rows of barracks, the officers' bungalows with their verandas and gardens, the parade grounds, the mess halls, the small market where local vendors sell their wares. It is a carefully constructed microcosm of British order, designed to provide comfort and familiarity for the foreign rulers and efficient control over their Indian subjects. You move through it, a familiar figure in your red coat, part of the machinery, yet often feeling like an outsider looking in. The weather, of course, is a constant, overbearing presence. The long, scorching hot season, when the sun beats down relentlessly, when the dust seems to permeate everything, when even the air feels thick and unmoving. Then the monsoon, a welcome relief at first, bringing the cool, cleansing rain, but quickly turning everything to mud, bringing dampness and a new set of ailments. The humidity during the monsoon can be even more oppressive than the dry heat, and the constant threat of flooding adds another layer of discomfort. You learn to live with the weather, to anticipate its moods, to simply endure. Sometimes, rumors ripple through the barracks, carried on the invisible currents of discontent. Whispers of new policies, of reduced pay, of perceived slights to your traditions or your religion. These rumors spread quickly, often exaggerated, but they tap into a reservoir of simmering resentment. The British officers, often oblivious, dismiss them as idle gossip. But you know better. You know that words have power, that even the quietest discontent can grow into a roar if nurtured by injustice. You listen carefully, absorbing the information, weighing it against your own experiences, your own sense of what is right and wrong. The issue of religion is a particularly sensitive one. The company, in its efforts to maintain order and efficiency, has a policy of non-interference, but it is a policy often interpreted with a heavy hand. Your own practices, your own beliefs, are deeply ingrained, part of the very fabric of your being. You carry your small amulets, your sacred threads, you observe your rituals, often in quiet defiance of the formal military structure. You hear stories of conversions, of missionaries, of attempts to subtly undermine your faith, and these stories, even if exaggerated, fuel a quiet apprehension. The British officers, with their rigid adherence to rules, often fail to understand the subtleties of your caste system, your dietary restrictions, your traditional practices. They might issue orders that, to them, seem innocuous, but to you are deeply offensive. A new type of bullet cartridge, perhaps rumored to be greased with animal fat, specifically pig or cow, anathema to Muslims and Hindus respectively. Such rumors, whether true or not, strike at the very core of your identity, creating a deep sense of unease, a feeling that your sacred beliefs are being deliberately defiled. You hear stories of sepoys refusing to use these cartridges, of punishments meted out, of disgruntlement growing in other regiments. You discuss these matters in hushed tones, after dark, when the officers are safely ensconced in their bungalows. There is a sense of shared vulnerability, a feeling that your very souls are under threat, not by an enemy on the battlefield, but by the very people you serve. These conversations are charged with a quiet intensity, a collective worry that gnaws at the edges of your loyalty. Your life, day in and day out, is a delicate balance. On one hand, the security of regular pay, the prestige of military service, the relative order of cantonment life. On the other, the endless discipline, the physical discomfort, the cultural alienation, and the simmering resentment over perceived injustices. You navigate this balance, trying to survive, to provide for your family, to maintain your dignity in a world that often seems intent on stripping it away. The sight of the British flag, the Union Jack, fluttering proudly above the cantonment headquarters, is a daily reminder of who is truly in charge. It is a symbol of their power, their dominion, their global reach. You salute it, of course, as part of your duty, but your feelings towards it are complex, a mixture of grudging respect for its might and a quiet longing for a time when a different flag, a different power, held sway over your land. The drills continue, day after day, week after week, a monotonous rhythm that dictates the very flow of your time. You practice marching, parade ground movements, bayonet drills, and the firing of your musket. Each movement is ingrained through endless repetition, until your body responds almost without conscious thought. Your hands become calloused, your shoulders ache, but you learn to push through the discomfort, to find a strange, almost meditative state in the physical exertion. Sometimes, the drills are interrupted by the arrival of a high-ranking British officer, perhaps a general, on inspection. These are tense affairs. Every button must gleam, every piece of equipment must be perfectly positioned, every movement executed with flawless precision. You stand at attention, your eyes fixed straight ahead, barely breathing, as the officer walks down the lines, his gaze sharp, scrutinizing every detail. A small mistake, a misplaced button, a dusty boot, can earn you a scathing rebuke, or worse, extra duty under the scorching sun. You learn to anticipate their movements, to hold your breath, to pray that their discerning eyes find no fault in your appearance or bearing. The language barrier is a persistent, low-level frustration. While some British officers make an effort to learn Hindustani, their fluency is often limited, their accents thick. Commands are often shouted, translated by your native officers, or conveyed through gestures. The nuances of conversation, the subtle humor, the informal exchanges that build rapport, are largely absent. This creates a distance, a perpetual sense of being on the outside, observing a conversation you can only partially grasp. You often resort to charades, to pointing, to simplified phrases, just to communicate the basic necessities of life. Your leisure time, when you have it, is often spent in surprisingly domestic pursuits. Mending your uniform, cleaning your equipment, sharpening your bayonet. There's a quiet satisfaction in maintaining your kit, in keeping it in pristine condition, a small act of control in a life where so much is dictated by others. You might also receive a visit from a local vendor, a quiet transaction in the barrack, purchasing a small sweet, a piece of fruit, or a fresh supply of tobacco, a fleeting taste of something beyond the company's rations. The bond with your weapon, the Brown Bess musket, grows stronger with each passing day. It is a simple, robust weapon, but effective. You learn its quirks, its weight, how it feels in your hands. You clean it meticulously, oiling the metal parts to prevent rust in the humid climate, ensuring the flint is sharp and the barrel is clear. It is an extension of your arm, a tool of your trade, and a symbol of your identity as a soldier. You learn to trust it, to rely on it, for your life often depends on its readiness. Training also includes target practice, a loud, smoky affair that fills the air with the smell of gunpowder and the crack of muskets. You learn to aim, to compensate for wind, to control your breathing, to squeeze the trigger smoothly. The targets are simple wooden silhouettes, but the act of hitting them, of sending the lead ball precisely where you intend, provides a quiet sense of accomplishment. It is a tangible skill, one that could mean the difference between life and death on the battlefield. When on campaign, the discomforts multiply. The barrack life, for all its monotony, offers a degree of shelter and routine. On campaign, you are exposed to the elements, sleeping under canvas tents, or often just under the open sky. The dust becomes even more pervasive, coating everything in a thick, gritty layer. The heat is relentless, the water often scarce and suspect. Marches are long and arduous, often covering many miles under the blazing sun. Your heavy kit weighing you down, your feet aching with every step. The company of your comrades becomes even more vital on campaign. You share your meager rations, you help each other with heavy loads, you offer encouragement when morale dips. The shared hardship forges a powerful bond, a quiet understanding that transcends language and cultural differences. You rely on each other for survival, for comfort, for the subtle strength that comes from knowing you are not alone in your suffering. The sounds of a campaigning army are distinct. The creak of bullock carts laden with supplies, the shouts of teamsters, the rhythmic thud of marching feet, the distant, mournful call of a bugle. At night, the campfires dot the landscape, small islands of light in the vast darkness, and the air is filled with the murmur of voices, the occasional song, and the constant buzz of insects drawn to the light. Sleep on campaign is even more fitful, punctuated by the sounds of the camp, the distant cries of animals, and the ever-present anxiety of an unseen enemy. Sometimes, you might encounter local villagers during your marches. Their faces often reflect a mix of curiosity, apprehension, and weariness. They watch you pass, these disciplined lines of red-coated men, knowing that your presence often brings both order and disruption. You might exchange a few words, a brief smile, a shared understanding of the heat, of the dust, of the peculiar nature of this foreign army moving through their ancient land. The landscapes you traverse are varied and vast. The flat, dusty plains of Hindustan, stretching to the horizon under a vast, unblinking sky. The green, humid jungles of Bengal, thick with vegetation, buzzing with unseen life. The air heavy with the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves. The rocky, arid terrain of the Deccan, where the sun beats down with an almost supernatural intensity. Each landscape presents its own challenges, its own particular blend of discomfort and subtle beauty. You learn to read the land, to recognize the signs of water, of habitation, of potential danger. You learn to move silently through the landscape, your senses sharpened by necessity. This ancient knowledge, inherited from generations of your ancestors who lived off the land, serves you well in this modern, foreign army. It is a quiet skill, often unnoticed by your British officers, but vital to your survival. Encounters with rebels or local bandits are always a possibility, a sudden, violent interruption to the monotonous rhythm of marching. The order to form square is given, shouted across the ranks, and your training kicks in. You move with practiced efficiency, forming a bristling hedgehog of bayonets, your muskets loaded and ready. The fear is a cold knot in your stomach, but the discipline, the training, The presence of your comrades pushes it down. You stand firm, your eyes scanning the horizon, waiting for the attack. The sound of musket fire, the cries of men, the chaotic clash of bodies is a stark contrast to the quiet discipline of the drill ground. You load and fire, the acrid smell of gunpowder filling your nostrils, the recoil of the musket jarring your shoulder. Your focus narrows to the immediate task, to the man beside you, to the enemy in front. When the skirmish ends, often as abruptly as it began, there is a collective exhalation, a slow release of tension, and the quiet, grim work of attending to the wounded. The wounded, both British and Indian, are treated with a grim efficiency. Amputations are common, performed without anesthesia, the screams of the patient echoing across the field. Medical knowledge is rudimentary, infection is rampant, and many who survive the initial wounds succumb to disease or gangrene. You see the faces of suffering, the raw pain, the quiet despair. It is a stark reminder of the brutal realities of this life, of the high price of military service. The British officers, for all their aloofness, often display a remarkable courage in battle, leading from the front, exposing themselves to the same dangers as you. You grudgingly respect this, even if their strategic decisions sometimes seem bewildering. They are, after all, soldiers, like you, bound by a shared fate on the battlefield. This shared experience of combat, however brief, sometimes bridges the cultural chasm, creating a temporary, unspoken understanding. After a battle, there is often a period of quiet mourning, or perhaps a grim celebration of survival. You count the fallen, both friend and foe, and the reality of death settles over the camp like a heavy shroud. You might offer a quiet prayer for the departed, a traditional ritual for the souls of the dead, a small act of defiance against the impersonal brutality of war. The silence that follows a skirmish is profound, broken only by the distant cries of jackals, drawn by the smell of blood. The long periods between campaigns are filled with the monotony of barrack life. The endless drills, the inspections, the cleaning, the occasional fatigue duty. Time seems to stretch out, a vast, featureless plain. You learn to fill these hours, to find small ways to amuse yourself, to connect with your comrades, to simply endure the relentless sameness. The days blend into weeks, the weeks into months, marked only by the change of seasons, the arrival of new recruits, or the departure of seasoned veterans. The news from distant parts of India, from other cantonments, filters in slowly. Rumors of other skirmishes, of new policies, of growing unrest. You hear about annexations, about new territories being brought under company rule, about the steady expansion of British power. These stories are discussed in hushed tones, often with a mix of apprehension and grudging admiration for the company's relentless ambition. You are a part of this expansion, a small cog in a vast machine, helping to extend the reach of a foreign power across your own land. Sometimes, you might be stationed in a new cantonment, a different part of India with different customs, different languages, different landscapes. The initial adjustment is always challenging. New faces, new routines, new environments to navigate. But you quickly adapt, drawing on your soldiers' resilience, your ability to make a home in any place, however temporary or alien. You learn a few words of the local language. You observe the local customs. You find a small measure of familiarity in the shared humanity of the people you encounter. The festivals, when they occur, are often celebrated in a muted, understated way within the barracks. Diwali, Holi, Eid, these joyous occasions from your home life are acknowledged, perhaps with a special meal, a few hours of respite from duty, but they lack the vibrant energy, the communal joy of your village. You might light a few lamps, share a few sweets, but the full exuberance is impossible under the watchful eye of your British commanders, and in the confines of military discipline. You often ponder your future. Will you serve your full term, returning home with your meager savings, a respected veteran? or will you fall victim to disease or to the inevitable dangers of battle? The thoughts are fleeting, pushed away by the demands of the present moment, but they are always there, a quiet undercurrent of uncertainty. Your life, once dictated by the predictable rhythms of the seasons and the family, is now subject to the whims of a distant power, to the fortunes of war, to the relentless march of history. The very air you breathe in the cantonment carries a subtle sense of tension, an unspoken awareness of the vast cultural and power divide. The British rule with a confidence born of their perceived superiority, but beneath the surface, there is a simmering resentment, a quiet pride in your own culture, your own traditions, that refuses to be entirely suppressed. You carry this tension within you, a constant, subtle hum, a quiet awareness of your place in this complex, evolving relationship. The sounds of the cantonment at night are different from the daytime. The bugle calls are replaced by the rhythmic cries of the sentries, the soft murmur of conversations from nearby barracks, and the occasional distant howl of a jackal. The air grows cooler, a blessed relief after the scorching heat of the day, and you can sometimes feel a gentle breeze stirring through the barrack, carrying the scent of dust and distant cooking fires. Sleep, when it comes, is often a brief respite, a shallow pool of unconsciousness from which you are easily disturbed. Your dreams, when you have them, are often fragmented, a chaotic mix of military duties and distant memories of home. You might dream of marching endlessly across a dusty plain, or of the roar of muskets in battle. Then, suddenly, you are back in your village, hearing the laughter of children, smelling the familiar spices of your mother's cooking, feeling the cool earth beneath your bare feet. These dreams are both a comfort and a quiet torture, reminding you of a life you have left behind, a world that seems increasingly distant. The early morning drills are relentless, regardless of the previous night's rest. The bugle call cuts through the dark, dragging you from your charpoy, forcing your still groggy body into motion. You learn to function on very little sleep, to push through the exhaustion, to rely on sheer willpower to get through the day. The discipline is ingrained, a deep-seated habit that ensures you respond to the commands even when your mind is still clouded with sleep. The training you receive is focused on the British style of warfare, linear tactics, volley firing, bayonet charges. It is a system designed for open battlefields, for disciplined ranks. You learn to execute these movements with robotic precision, becoming a small part of a larger, deadly machine. Your own traditional martial arts, the skills of your ancestors, are largely ignored, considered less effective than the European methods. You comply, of course, but you often wonder about the efficacy of these rigid formations against a more fluid, guerrilla-style enemy. Your uniform, the ubiquitous red coat, is a constant presence. It is heavy, often ill-fitting, and perpetually covered in a fine layer of dust. The brass buttons require constant polishing, a tedious but necessary task that ensures you pass inspection. The high collar chafes against your neck, and the thick wool fabric feels like a suffocating embrace in the tropical heat. Yet, it is also a symbol, a uniform that sets you apart, identifies you as a company soldier, and, in some ways, connects you to a wider, powerful world. The sight of new recruits arriving at the cantonment is always interesting. Young men, often from your own region, their faces a mixture of apprehension and excitement. You see in them your past self, the innocent idealism, the eager anticipation of a new life. You watch them fumble through their first drills, struggle with their heavy muskets, and gradually, slowly, transform into hardened sepoys. Just like you might offer them quiet advice, a subtle warning about an officer, or a word of encouragement when they seem overwhelmed. The food, as you continue to endure it, becomes a source of quiet resignation. You eat what is given, often without complaint, for complaining achieves little. The hardtack, the dal, the salted meat, all become part of the monotonous rhythm of your existence. You learn to appreciate the small variations, the rare instances when a fresh vegetable or a piece of fruit might appear in your ration. These are minor joys, fleeting pleasures that break the predictable routine. Hygiene, or the lack thereof, is a constant companion. The scarcity of fresh water, the communal washing facilities, the sheer number of men living in close quarters, all contribute to a pervasive sense of grime. Your clothes feel perpetually damp with sweat. Your skin feels gritty with dust. You might scratch at an itch, a persistent irritation that seems to move from one part of your body to another. The occasional lice are a given, an accepted part of the soldier's life, dealt with through crude methods and a healthy dose of resigned acceptance. The medical treatment, as you've observed or experienced, is often worse than the illness itself. The surgeon, often a kind but overwhelmed man, works with limited tools and even more limited knowledge. Amputations are common, performed quickly, often without anesthesia, the rough saw cutting through bone, the screams of the patient echoing in the makeshift infirmary. Infections are rampant, and many who survive the initial trauma succumb to the silent killers of gangrene and fever. You pray that you never suffer a serious injury, for the outcome is often bleak. Your personal possessions are few and carefully guarded, a small bag containing your spare dhoti, a few personal tokens, perhaps a small religious image or amulet, a few letters from home. These are your anchors, your last connections to the life you left behind. You keep them close, hidden, a private world amidst the public existence of the barrack. They are reminders of who you are, beyond the red coat and the musket. The presence of families in the cantonment is a complex issue. Some sepoys are allowed to bring their wives and children, often living in separate, but still cramped, quarters. Their presence offers a small measure of domesticity, a fleeting echo of normal life. But it also creates new anxieties. The vulnerability of your loved ones to disease, to the harsh realities of military life, to the whims of the British authorities. You often wonder if it is truly a blessing or a curse to have them here, exposed to the same uncertainties as you. The relationship between the British and the local Indian population outside the cantonment is also something you observe. The British build their roads, their railways, their administrative buildings, slowly but surely reshaping the landscape of India. They impose their laws, collect their taxes, and administer a justice system that often feels alien and unjust. You see the resentment, the quiet resistance, in the eyes of the villagers, even as they provide services to the company, selling their wares in the cantonment market. You are part of this imposition, a uniformed agent of the foreign power, and you feel the weight of that role. The endless cycle of drills and inspections is interspersed with periods of guard duty, standing watch, often alone, under the vast, unblinking eye of the sun, or the equally vast and indifferent expanse of the night sky. The hours drag on, slow and silent, broken only by the occasional distant sound or the changing of the guard. Your mind drifts, replaying conversations, reimagining scenes from home, or simply sinking into a profound emptiness, a mental quiet that is both a blessing and a curse. You learn to be patient, a virtue cultivated by the endless waiting, the slow pace of military life, the protracted nature of campaigns. You learn to observe, to notice the small details, the changing patterns of the clouds, the flight of a bird, the way the light shifts across the landscape. These small observations become your private entertainments, your quiet meditations, a way to keep your mind engaged in a world that often demands only unquestioning obedience. The heat, a pervasive, relentless force, dictates much of your existence. You seek out any scrap of shade, any momentary respite from its searing intensity. Your body is perpetually coated in sweat, your throat perpetually dry. You learn to drink sparingly, to conserve your precious water ration, to anticipate the onset of thirst. The sun, a burning disk in the sky, seems to drain the very color from the landscape, leaving everything in a hazy, shimmering glare. The dust, a constant companion, settles everywhere. It coats your uniform, infiltrates your hair, grinds into your skin. You taste it in your mouth, a dry, earthy flavor that lingers. It rises with every step you take, every gust of wind, creating a perpetual haze in the air. You accept it, knowing that it is simply part of the Indian landscape, an inescapable reality of your life as a sepoy. The evenings offer a temporary reprieve. As the sun dips below the horizon, the air cools, the light softens, and a different kind of life begins to stir in the cantonment. The sounds of men relaxing, of quiet conversations, of the distant strumming of a sitar or the gentle beat of a tabla drift on the evening breeze. You might gather with your comrades, share a few stories, play a game of cards, or simply sit in silence, enjoying the brief respite from the day's heat and discipline. The bond you share with your fellow sepoys is deep, forged in shared hardship and mutual reliance. You are all from different backgrounds, but here, in the ranks, you are a family. You trust each other with your lives on the battlefield, and you share the small comforts and discomfitures of daily life in the barrack. This camaraderie is a lifeline, a source of strength and comfort in a world that can often feel alien and isolating. The quiet moments, the ones where you are simply existing, observing the world around you, are often the most profound. You might watch a lizard scurry across the barrack wall, its movements quick and precise. Or you might listen to the distant sounds of a village, the faint shouts of children, the bleating of goats, a quiet reminder of the life that continues beyond the cantonment walls. These small observations ground you, connecting you to the larger world, even as you remain confined by the demands of military service. The British military hierarchy, with its rigid structure and emphasis on rank, feels profoundly different from the more fluid social structures of your own culture. You learn to navigate this system, to understand its unspoken rules, to show deference to those above you, and to exercise authority over those below. It is a system built on power and control, and you are a small but vital part of its machinery. The sense of being caught between two worlds is a constant, subtle hum. You wear the uniform of the British. You speak their commands. You fight their wars. But you are also Indian, with your own language, your own customs, your own deeply held beliefs. You are a bridge, in a way, between these two worlds, but also a person stretched taut by their conflicting demands. This tension is often unarticulated, an internal dialogue that plays out in the quiet moments of your day. The concept of loyalty, as presented by your British officers, is a straightforward one: loyalty to the company, to the Queen, to the flag. But for you, loyalty is a more complex, multi-layered thing. You are loyal to your family, to your village, to your caste, to your religion, and then, perhaps, to the company that provides your livelihood. These layers of loyalty can sometimes pull in conflicting directions, creating an internal dissonance that you learn to live with, to manage in your own quiet way. The stories of past campaigns, of victories and defeats, are often shared around the barrack at night. The grizzled veterans recount tales of daring charges, of heroic stands, of grim retreats. You listen intently, absorbing the lessons, understanding the realities of battle far beyond the sanitized drills on the parade ground. These stories are your history, your shared memory, passed down from one generation of sepoys to the next, shaping your understanding of the company's power and your own place within its vast empire. The occasional visits from British civilians, often the wives and families of officers or administrators, are peculiar spectacles. They arrive in palanquins or carriages, dressed in elaborate European fashions, their faces shielded from the sun by parasols. They seem to float through the cantonment, detached and ethereal, their presence a constant, subtle reminder of the vast gulf between their lives of comfort and your own life of discipline and hardship. You observe them silently, their foreignness a source of quiet fascination. The constant hum of insects is a permanent soundtrack to your life in India. The persistent buzz of flies, the high-pitched whine of mosquitoes, the chirping of crickets at night. These small creatures are a reminder of the vibrant, teeming life of the subcontinent, a life that continues regardless of the comings and goings of armies and empires. You learn to swat them instinctively, to ignore their persistent presence, to simply coexist with them. The changing of the guards at night is a somber, rhythmic affair. The crunch of boots on gravel, the low murmur of voices, the clink of equipment, and then the quiet, almost spiritual call of the sentry. All's well, or, number 3, all correct. The sound echoes in the still night air, a reassurance of order, a promise of vigilance. You hear it from your charpoy, a comfort in the darkness, a quiet reminder that others are awake, watching, protecting the sleep of the camp. The training in musketry is vital. You learn to aim, to compensate for the slight inaccuracies of the brown bess, to squeeze the trigger smoothly rather than jerking it. You learn to judge distances, to anticipate enemy movements. The scent of burnt gunpowder, the kick of the musket against your shoulder, becomes familiar, almost comforting in its regularity. It is a grim comfort, for it speaks of violence, but also of skill, of mastery, of your ability to defend yourself and your comrades. The sounds of the parade ground are constant. The sharp bark of British commands, often repeated by your native officers in Hindustani. The rhythmic crunch of hundreds of boots on the dusty earth, the clang of equipment, the rattle of bayonets, and then the sudden, deafening roar of a volley of muskets, followed by the acrid smell of gunpowder filling the air. These sounds are the soundtrack to your daily existence, a relentless reminder of your military purpose. You learn to read the subtle shifts in the demeanor of your British officers. A slight tightening of the jaw, a flicker in their eyes, a certain tone in their voice, all convey meaning beyond the spoken word. You learn to anticipate their displeasure, to gauge their moods, to navigate their unpredictable temperaments. This quiet observational skill is vital for avoiding punishment, for maintaining your position, for simply making your life a little easier. The camaraderie among the sepoys extends to sharing small, personal items. A pinch of tobacco, a piece of news from a distant village, a shared laugh over a particularly absurd order from a British officer. These small acts of generosity, these quiet moments of connection, build the fabric of your barrack community. You rely on each other for moral support, for a sense of belonging in a world that often feels alien and isolating. The occasional skirmishes, the brief, violent clashes with rebels or local raiders, are grim interruptions to the monotonous routine. The sudden adrenaline surge, the fear, the training kicking in, the chaotic sounds of battle. Then the quiet aftermath, the wounded, the dead, the heavy silence that descends upon the field. These moments are a stark reminder of the fragile line between life and death, of the ever-present danger that lurks beneath the surface of military life. Your thoughts often drift to your family back home, your aging parents, your wife, your children. You imagine their faces, their daily routines, the simple rhythms of their lives. You worry about their health, their harvest, their safety. The letters you send home, often dictated to a literate comrade, are filled with reassurances, with promises of a steady income, with hopes for a future reunion. They are your lifeline to the world you left behind, a world that seems to grow more distant with each passing day. The cantonment, with its ordered barracks and parade grounds, is a stark contrast to the organic chaos of an Indian village. It is a world built for efficiency, for control, for the projection of British power. You are a part of this controlled environment, your life dictated by its rules, its rhythms. You learn to appreciate the order, even as you sometimes long for the vibrant, unpredictable life of your homeland. The uniform, particularly the red coat, becomes a second skin, a part of your identity. Even when you are not on duty, you are a sepoy, recognized by your bearing, by the faint tan lines left by your crossbelts, by the subtle way you carry yourself. It is a mark of your profession, a symbol of your commitment, however complex your feelings towards it may be. The stories of grievances, of perceived slights, of broken promises by the company accumulate over time. A reduction in pay, a new regulation that infringes on your religious practices, a British officer's insult. These stories are whispered in the barrack, shared between regiments, growing in power with each retelling. They form a quiet reservoir of resentment, a simmering discontent that underlies the superficial order of the cantonment. You watch the British officers enjoy their leisure time, their polo matches, their evening dances, their elaborate dinners. They live in a world of comfort and privilege, largely insulated from the hardships you endure. Their lives seem utterly removed from your own, a constant, subtle reminder of the power imbalance, of the racial and social hierarchy that defines your existence as a sepoy. You observe them, silently, without judgment, simply noting the vast difference in your stations. The heat, again, is an ever-present force, a relentless, suffocating blanket that presses down on you from dawn till dusk. It drains your energy, makes you constantly thirsty, and often makes sleep elusive. You learn to seek out the smallest patch of shade, to move slowly and deliberately, to conserve your strength. It is an opponent you can never truly defeat, only endure. The monsoon, when it finally arrives, brings a temporary relief from the heat, but replaces it with pervasive dampness. The air becomes thick and humid, your clothes perpetually clammy. The ground turns to mud, making marching difficult, and the constant threat of rain makes outdoor duties a misery. It's a different kind of discomfort, but no less relentless. You learn to live with the damp, to accept the pervasive smell of mildew, to simply endure the cycle of the seasons. The concept of honor in the British Army is often tied to bravery in battle, to unquestioning obedience, to loyalty to the flag. But for you, honor is also tied to your family, to your caste, to your faith, to the upholding of your traditions. These different interpretations of honor can sometimes clash, forcing you to make difficult choices, to navigate a path that maintains your integrity in both worlds. The sheer monotony of military life is perhaps the most insidious challenge. The endless repetition of drills, the predictable meals, the lack of real personal freedom. Time seems to stretch out, a vast, featureless plain, broken only by the occasional campaign or the rare letter from home. You learn to cope with this monotony, to find small ways to amuse yourself, to let your mind drift, to simply exist within the unchanging rhythm of the barrack. Your conversations with your fellow sepoys often revolve around the practicalities of life, the quality of the rations, the latest news from other regiments, the eccentricities of your officers. But sometimes, when the light is low and the voices are hushed, the conversations turn to deeper matters, to family, to religion, to the past, to the unspoken anxieties about the future. These are the moments of true connection, when the shared humanity of your comrades shines through the rigid discipline of military life. The strict adherence to routine, so central to British military life, contrasts sharply with the more fluid, seasonal rhythms of your village existence. Here, every hour is accounted for, every task prescribed. You eat at fixed times, drill at fixed times, sleep at fixed times. It creates an almost mechanical existence, stripping away the spontaneity, the organic flow of life back home. You adapt, of course, becoming a creature of habit, but the internal yearning for the natural rhythms of your own culture remains. The experience of marching is a particularly defining feature of your life as a sepoy. Hour after hour, day after day, your feet pounding the dusty earth. The rhythmic swing of your arms, the weight of your musket, the constant movement of your body. You learn to find a meditative state in the marching, your mind drifting, your body simply performing the automatic action. The landscape passes by, a blur of familiar and unfamiliar sights, as you move relentlessly towards a destination often unknown to you. The constant exposure to British customs and ways of thinking creates a subtle, gradual shift in your own perspective. You observe their efficiency, their discipline, their technological prowess. You might not always agree with their methods, but you grudgingly acknowledge their effectiveness. Your world, once confined to your village, has expanded, encompassing the vastness of the company's empire. A world where strange, pale-skinned men wield immense power. The small, everyday objects of your life as a sepoy take on significance. Your brass lota, your mess tin, your tattered blanket. They are your constant companions, the familiar anchors in an ever-shifting existence. You polish them, mend them, care for them, for they are your only personal possessions, a small measure of comfort and familiarity in a life defined by foreign discipline. The sound of the bugle, marking the beginning and end of every activity, becomes deeply ingrained. It is the soundtrack to your existence, dictating your movements, signaling the transition from one duty to the next. You learn to distinguish its different calls: reveille, parade, mealtime, retreat, lights out. Each note carries a precise meaning, an instruction that your body obeys instinctively, even in the depths of sleep. The feeling of being under constant scrutiny, of being perpetually observed by your British officers, is a subtle but persistent pressure. Every movement, every expression, every action is potentially subject to their judgment. You learn to maintain a placid, neutral demeanor, to keep your thoughts to yourself, to present an outward appearance of obedience and discipline. It is a form of self-preservation, a way to navigate a system that wields immense power over your life. The occasional visits from British missionaries, sometimes venturing into the cantonment or the surrounding villages, are viewed with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. They speak of a different faith, a different God, promising salvation and conversion. You listen politely, perhaps, but your own beliefs are deeply rooted, passed down through generations. Their message, however well-intentioned, often feels alien, a subtle threat to the traditions that define your very being. The diseases that plague the barracks are a source of constant dread. Malaria, with its debilitating fevers and chills. Cholera, with its rapid and horrifying course. Dysentery, weakening you from within. You see your comrades fall ill, their bodies wasting away, and you know that you too are vulnerable. The rudimentary medical care offers little comfort, and you often turn to traditional remedies, or simply to prayer, hoping to ward off the unseen enemies that lurk in the air and water. The simple act of sitting in silence with your comrades, after a long day of drills and duties, is a powerful antidote to the isolation and monotony. The shared presence, the unspoken understanding, the quiet camaraderie, these are the bonds that truly sustain you. You are a family, in a way, forged in the crucible of shared hardship, united by your common experience as sepoys in the company's army. The dust of India is a constant. It swirls in the air, coats the ground, settles on every surface. You breathe it in, taste it on your tongue, feel it gritty against your skin. It is an inescapable part of the landscape, a pervasive presence that defines the very atmosphere of your life in the cantonment. You become accustomed to it, learning to live with its subtle presence, its dry, earthy smell. The heat, again, is an enemy you cannot escape. It drains your strength, makes you constantly thirsty, and turns every physical exertion into a monumental effort. You long for the cool embrace of evening, for the temporary relief that the setting sun brings. But you endure, learning to conserve your energy, to move slowly and deliberately, to simply exist within its relentless embrace. The system of justice within the company's army is often swift and brutal. Minor infractions can lead to severe punishments, extra duties, floggings, or even public humiliation. Serious offenses can result in court-martial and execution. You witness these punishments, the raw brutality of them, and they serve as a powerful deterrent, a constant reminder of the strict discipline that governs your life. You learn to walk a careful line, to avoid drawing attention to yourself, to simply obey. Your dreams, when they allow you to truly fall into them, are often of home. The familiar faces of your family, the sounds of your village, the smell of your mother's cooking, the cool shade of the banyan tree. These are the precious images that sustain you, that remind you of the world beyond the cantonment, a world that waits for your return. They are a quiet defiance against the foreignness of your military life, a reminder of your true roots. The news of the annexation of new territories, of the company's relentless expansion across India, filters into the barracks. You hear about new laws, about the dethronement of local rulers, about the gradual erosion of traditional ways of life. These stories are met with a mixture of awe for the company's power and a quiet sense of unease. You are part of this expansion, a uniformed agent of this change, and you feel the weight of that role, the subtle tension it creates within you. The uniforms, the drills, the discipline, all contribute to a sense of uniformity, of being part of a larger, impersonal machine. You are a sepoy, one among thousands, a cog in the company's vast army. But beneath the uniform, you are still an individual, with your own thoughts, your own dreams, your own quiet aspirations. This internal world remains yours, a private sanctuary untouched by the demands of military life. The quiet moments of reflection, often in the late evening as the cantonment settles into its nightly hum, are when your mind drifts furthest. You contemplate the vastness of the land, the enormity of the changes brought by the British. You consider your own place within this grand historical sweep, a small individual caught in the currents of empire. These thoughts are not always clear, but they are ever present, a subtle undercurrent to your daily existence. The bond between you and your musket, the brown bess, is perhaps the most intimate relationship you have in this life. It is heavy, often unwieldy, but it is reliable, a constant companion. You clean it meticulously, oiling its parts, ensuring its readiness. It is your tool, your protector, and your silent confidant. In the roar of battle, it is an extension of your will, and in the quiet of the barrack, it is a sturdy, familiar presence. The sheer physical exertion of your life as a sepoy is a constant. The long marches, the endless drills, the fatigue duties under the blazing sun. Your body aches, your muscles protest, but you push through the discomfort, drawing on a deep reservoir of resilience. You learn the limits of your own endurance and how to push beyond them, a quiet testament to the strength that lies within you. The scent of dust, of sweat, of old cloth, of gunpowder, of the occasional wood smoke, these are the smells that define your life in the cantonment. They permeate everything, clinging to your uniform, to your hair, to your very skin. You become accustomed to them, learning to identify the subtle variations, the nuances that tell you about the immediate environment. They are the olfactory landscape of your existence, the occasional moments of quiet humor, a shared glance, a subtle joke whispered among comrades, are precious. They offer a brief respite from the seriousness of military life, a momentary release of tension. These moments of levity are often unspoken, a knowing look, a shared grin, a silent understanding that transcends language and cultural differences. They are the small joys that make the hardships tolerable. The sounds of the parade ground, the rhythmic thud of marching feet, the sharp bark of commands, the rattle of equipment, are constant. They penetrate the very fabric of the cantonment, an omnipresent reminder of the discipline, the order, the military purpose that defines this place. Even in your sleep, you might faintly hear them, a subconscious hum that underpins your existence. The hierarchy of the British Army, with its clear lines of command and its emphasis on deference, is a system you navigate carefully. You learn to salute crisply, to address your officers with respect, to obey orders without question. It is a formal, often impersonal system, but you learn to function within it, to find your place, to perform your duties with disciplined efficiency. The concept of duty is something that you live every single day. Duty to the company, to your officers, to your comrades. It is a demanding, often thankless commitment, but it is also the bedrock of your identity as a sepoy. You perform your duties day in and day out with a quiet steadfastness, knowing that it is the path you have chosen, the way you support your family. The relentless sun, a burning disk in the vast, pale sky, dictates the very rhythm of your day. It drives you to seek shade, to conserve your energy, to dream of cooler climes. It is a powerful, unforgiving force, a constant reminder of the harsh realities of the Indian climate. You learn to live with its glare, its heat, its dehydrating intensity, simply enduring its presence. The British officers, with their often peculiar customs and their sometimes baffling decisions, are a constant source of quiet observation. You study their habits, their moods, their interactions, trying to understand their motivations, their thought processes. They are your commanders, and understanding them, however partially, is key to navigating your life in the company's army. The waiting. So much of military life is waiting. Waiting for orders, waiting for meals, waiting for inspections, waiting for the end of a long march. You learn patience, a deep, ingrained patience that allows you to simply exist in the interim. To let time pass without agitation, to conserve your mental and physical energy for when it is truly needed. The water, precious and often questionable, is a constant concern. You drink what is available, but the subtle anxiety about its purity, about the unseen dangers it might contain, never truly leaves you. You have seen comrades fall ill from contaminated water, and you know the risks. It is a fundamental necessity, but also a source of quiet worry. The barrack, your home for so many years, is a place of shared experience. The hard charpoys, the dusty floor, the dim light, the constant presence of your comrades. It is a place of rest, of camaraderie, of quiet contemplation. It is where you begin and end each day, a familiar anchor in a world of constant movement and change. The letters from home, when they arrive, are your lifeline to the world you left behind. They are often simple, conveying basic news, but they are filled with the unspoken love and longing of your family. You hold them carefully, reading them over and over, conjuring the faces, the voices, the smells of your village, reminding you of the life that still awaits you beyond the cantonment walls. The silence that settles over the cantonment in the deep hours of the night is a profound one, broken only by the distant cries of the sentries, the rustle of nocturnal creatures, and the soft breathing of your sleeping comrades. It is a silence that invites introspection, a time for your mind to drift, to wander, to contemplate the vastness of the universe and your small place within it. You lie on your charpoy, your body heavy with the day's exertion, your mind slowly quieting. The sounds of the barrack, the breathing of the men around you, the faint creak of the roof, all merge into a single, soothing hum. The scent of dust and humanity and distant wood smoke fills your nostrils, a familiar comfort. The heat, though diminished, still lingers, a subtle presence in the air. You close your eyes, letting the thoughts drift, allowing the long, slow, quiet rhythm of your sepoy life to carry you gently into the welcoming embrace of sleep. You simply exist, a quiet presence in the vastness of British India, enduring, observing, dreaming. The world continues its slow, unwavering spin.